How's it look?
Yeah, good.
My mic's on. Make sure your mic's on, John.
Okay.
All right.
Check 1, 2.
Okay, that was perfect. All right, let's do a countdown.
Whoops. There goes the coffee.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Perfect.
Welcome back, friends. Welcome to the Jersey Alchemist. I'm your host, Dr. John Gerard Gallucci.
And I'm Philip D'Angelo. John, how are you today?
Good, man. Good.
Everything well?
Yeah, everything's good. I'm happy to be here on a Sunday. It's kind of peaceful.
Yeah, I like that. You know, you said things are good. You know, when things are good, I don't think we really appreciate when things are good. I mean, when struggles hit us in our life, right, we tend to get caught up in it, and then we don't realize how many good days we have.
That's why he's here. You need to hear him out. He's amazing. Once he gets rolling and his heart chakra unwinds, look out.
Yeah, I got a lot of heart, as you do as well. John, one thing I'd like to talk to you about today.
Sure.
A short discussion, if you will. I love your book. Please hold it
Thank
up
you.
So we can see it again.
Okay.
It's
a repeat performance.
The title is?
Title is My Life with God, and the subtitle is really where it's at. The subtitle is A Pediatric Surgeon's Supernatural Journey While Healing Sick Children. And that's basically what the book is all about. And the underlying message isn't for me. It's for you, the reader, the viewer. It's all about learning how to treat others with your heart. And if you do that, now you're on the road to allowing the Holy Spirit to reside in your God center. It starts to nudge out the ego because our heart center needs to subdue our egos, to work with the ego instead of trying to kill the ego off, because we all need an ego in this world. And then once we do that, we change the world overnight. And then you know what happens to the news media? It crashes and it burns. It doesn't work anymore. It falls upon deaf ears. Nobody wants to hear their bullshit. So open up your heart. Allow the Holy Spirit in. And listen, I just want to say one thing before we start. Maybe I ended a part of the last episode a little bit edgy. Well, my intent isn't to be edgy. My intent is not to offend people. It's not. But on the other hand, I'm not here to be Mr. Vanilla. If this podcast were all about being vanilla, that's not going to be very exciting, even though I love vanilla. It's not going to be exciting. So we're going to go for it. And really what this is all about is waking everybody up. Everybody on social media is sick of that expression, wake up. But guess what, people? We have to wake up. We are in the era of the apocalypse. And we're going to get to the topic, but everybody says, oh, the apocalypse, oh, the humanities, oh, the calamity, oh, the apocalypse sounds scary like Armageddon. No. The word apocalypse is ancient Greek, and it means to reveal, or the revealing. So we are in that era where everything that's been underground, metaphorically and literally, is now, the light is shining on it, and we are going to learn about stuff that most people will not believe. It's going to turn stomachs. It's going to get people really upset. But the debauchery and the filth and the evil and the sickness that's been going on this planet for thousands of years, friends, you're meant to be here now in this time. What does that mean? You are here, and you are eventually going to be the light. And that's why we're here. We're here to foster your awareness. We're here to foster you becoming the light. Because, like we said last week, all the darkness in the world cannot extinguish the light of a single candle. Thank you, St. Francis of Assisi. Yeah.
Two things, if I may. One thing, the first being, you are definitely not vanilla. I mean, you might be a little pistachio if we're talking flavors, but
well, I got red on today.
You got red on, definitely not vanilla. As far as the Holy Spirit goes, okay. Now I know in your book you talk about the Holy Spirit entering your body and working through the Holy Spirit. Tell me what it was like to write that book. Did you feel like the Holy Spirit guided you in writing that book as well? It made it come out easier.
Well,
And just
absolutely, and let's, if I may,
absolutely.
let me just step back a few spaces in the game of Candyland, and I'll go back to when these stories came about. Now, the first chapter, Spiritual Heart and Eyes, goes all the way back to my first vivid memories of being alive on this planet. And I was 6 months old. And a lot of people say, oh, you can't remember anything when you were 6 months old. Yes, yes, yes. And most of you probably can too. You just don't know how to process it. But memories from when I was 6 months old are like commonplace. And it's not like just isolated memories where, nobody can kind of challenge me on it. No, these were events, like me in the hospital, having an intussusception reduced, that kind of thing. So the stories start when I was 6 months old. Every one of the stories in this book, there's 38 chapters, they all happened just the way you'll read them. And some of the stories kind of snuck up on me, and they were like an ambush. And that's okay, because before you know it, the event happens, and then you're in it and out of it before you realize it, and there's not a lot you can do about it, because it just hits hard. It's like wham, it just happens. And then there are other stories that kind of take a long time to really come to fruition. Maybe the care of a child that goes on for months and months and months. Some of the kids, were under my care for years, and I'm still friends with the families. And that's the difference between how certain physicians work and others don't work that way. I can't be intimately involved with operating on somebody's premature infant or baby or child or teenager and not stay involved in their family forever. Why not? Why not? I know that's kind of a generalization, but for me, that's how it works, and it's worked out very well. The question was, how did it feel to write the book? Well, all of these stories kind of piled up, and I told my associate, I don't know, she must have heard the stories a lot, and my kids are sick of hearing the stories. And she says, you got to write a book one day. And I said, yeah, I'd like to write a book, but what am I going to write a book about? I'm a good cook. I used to own a restaurant with my brother. Maybe I'll write a cookbook. She's like, no, you're not going to write a cookbook. She goes, you are going to put down all of the stories, all of these amazing against all odds stories into book form. She goes, and then one day it's going to be, on film. It's going to be a TV show. It's going to be a movie, because the stories are just unbelievable and too good to just not address. So I heard enough from her over the years. I think she was prodding me for like 5 years to write the book. So I don't know what got into me, but it was January 7th of 2016. The beginning of 2016, I started writing. I started writing on a spiral notebook and a pen, and I started writing stories. And she said, just let it flow. She is my spiritual and psychic mentor, thank you. She goes, just let it flow. She goes, stop trying so hard. She goes, you remember what happened? You've told me the stories over and over again. And I said, yeah, well, you're right. And then I realized this isn't going to work with a spiral notebook and a pen. So I brought my computer in onto what I have, like a library table in my study at home. It's really like a dining room table. And I set it up, and I never looked back. It took me 1 calendar year to write the entire book. It's not a research book. It's not an academic work. It's not. It's a true accounting of real happenstances with real people. And so I did do some research. There are footnotes, and there's a bibliography and whatnot, just to kind of, bring it up to, okay, yeah, there's some, substance to the book that we can kind of like cross-reference. That's all good stuff. But I had the idea that after many of the chapters, I asked the patients themselves if they were old enough, and or the parents, to write something, write an excerpt, write a paragraph that follows the chapter to show people, yeah, this is what happened. We're on board. This is exactly how it happened. You know, he's not a charlatan. He's not making up these crazy stories, because quite frankly, most people wouldn't believe the stories because they're closed-minded, and they're so against all odds. They don't believe that fantastic things can happen the way they happen in this book, the way they happened in real life. So it took me about a year to write the book, and I got to tell you, and I never wrote a book before. I wrote some academic papers here and there through the years when I was a surgery resident. I did not enjoy doing academic writing. I liked the research, I liked to be in the lab, but I'm not a statistics guy. That's just my little confession. I'm not that guy. I'd hand it off to somebody else. Here, please do the stats on this. Let's work on it together, but please. And so I would write, and I would be like, writer's block, and I would just put everything away, shut the computer off, and I wouldn't go back to it for 2 weeks. And then I'd be walking by the table, and I'd be like, and then I would sit down. Sometimes I would sit down, I don't know, 7 p.m. on a Saturday night, turn on that computer, fire it up, and all of a sudden, boom,
It's open.
Everything, the current was flowing, literally, the energy, the channeling. And there were several times when I sat down in the evening on a Saturday, and I didn't finish writing until Sunday in the middle of the night, like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, literally. I would get up, have something to eat, go to the bathroom, and come back and just keep going because I was in the current. And that's what happens. That's how a book like this gets written. So that happened, and then after I had the manuscript, which ended up, I think, 155,000 words, I was referred to an attorney who then handed me to an editor, somebody who had worked professionally in the television industry, and he explained to me. He says, look, he said, the Academy Award-winning film, To Kill a Mockingbird, I think he said they shot 55 hours with the best film crews, the best directors, producers, the acting, cast, Gregory Peck. I mean, unbelievable. They had everything right, but the editors had to take the 55 hours of film and cut it down to whatever the finished product was. Yeah. He says, maybe it was 2 hours. He says, think of how many different versions of that film could have come out.
Absolutely.
He says, and what they finally, agreed on, won an Academy Award, or must have won several Academy Awards. Don't hold me to that because I'm not an expert along those lines. So I had to cut 155,000 words back to 120 words. Each story and each happenstance was like one of my kids. It was one of my babies. So who do you cut out when you're leaving on the great ship of life? Who do you leave on the dock? It's like,
how do you do that?
I don't know. So with the editor's help, I came up with this last version, and it, the publishing process was not easy, and it finally got published on March 25th, 2019. And I will say, without getting into details, you better bet your you-know-what that this book was censored. How do I know it was censored? Because I got a call from one of the publishers, and he said to me, well, we love the book, and we're all set to go, except there's a segment in a chapter that if you leave this in, deals off, we're not publishing your book. And I was flabbergasted.
That's outrageous.
I was flabbergasted. Right. All I saw Nazis goose-stepping. I saw, tanks firing, their cannons. I saw Normandy and the
storm in the beach.
The storm in the beach, and the machine guns mowing everybody down. I saw piles and piles of books being physically burned like on the old newsreels. How dare you? Oh, I hate that. How dare you? Because it reminds me of climate change.
Ouch.
You're gonna censor my book because the topic that was in that chapter cannot be discussed. Friends, ladies and gentlemen, people, brothers and sisters, there should be no topic that cannot be discussed in a public forum. Think about that. So I don't think the topic today is going to be censorship, but think about that. So Phil asked me what it was like to write this book. It was an energy flow. It was a current flow. It all channeled out of me. The Holy Spirit was pushing. And it's an amazing book. And there are people who have read this book who have burst into tears and told me that the book changed their lives. Is it a big commercial success? Absolutely not. We talked about that in a previous episode, that the title, merely the title, My Life with God, killed the sales and the publicity of this book because the world doesn't want to hear it. And if they're going to censor part of the book that had everything to do with the Holy Spirit, they just don't want this kind of information being widespread. Okay, enough from me.
John, 12,000 surgeries. Is that correct? The number of surgeries
In my career?
in your career?
Well, if you count a 6-year general surgery residency and then a 2-year ass-kicking pediatric surgery fellowship in Montreal at McGill University, I did just under 4,000 operations while, quote, in training. So the first 6 years I was a surgery resident, learning how to become a general surgeon. Then the next 2 years in Montreal, I was already a surgeon, I was board certified, and I was now learning how to be a pediatric surgeon, which I'm thrilled to say was right up my alley. General surgery to me was pediatric surgery. It just
Got your blood going.
I mean, I knew it had to be because that's why I decided to go in that direction. And my mentors in general surgery were the ones that saw it, knew it, felt it, so they backed my application. And, word of mouth and letters of recommendation are what gets you there. So I was thrilled to work my ass into the ground for 2 years. We were not allowed to live more than 10 minutes away from the hospital because we were the trauma team, this team, we were everything.
Wow.
Right. So after that, through my career at multiple different places in New Jersey, because that's where I'm from, and that's where the family was, somewhere between 12 and 14,000 operations. And, not all of them were, big life-saving operations. A lot of them are considered small operations, like a hernia repair. But, hernia repair is not a small thing if it's your baby.
On your end, it's a small operation. On the patient's end, it might not be so small.
Kind of, yeah.
Right?
And some of the
life-threatening.
Right, and some of the hernia repairs you could do, and every pediatric surgeon knows this, and none of them should deny it. Some of the hernia repairs that you encounter on premature infants, wow. Like, I'd rather be taking out a big basketball-sized malignant tumor than some of those hernias because they were just killers. They were so difficult.
Oh, that's amazing. Talk to me about the difference. You trained in Montreal, correct?
For pediatric surgery.
Okay, so tell me the difference in that hospital in Montreal, in Canada, another country, and a hospital in the United States, pediatric-wise.
Good question. I, guilty as charged. I had an affinity for Canada before I went, and it came by way of ice hockey. So anytime I watched an NHL game on television, or if I went to a game at Madison Square Garden and I heard them sing the Canadian national anthem, I was covered with goosebumps. That's just how it is with me. And
you know how to say Rangers in French Canadian? Orange.
Orange. There you go.
I think that's correct. Being a Ranger fan.
I have no idea. Yeah, you got.
We'll find out what that means.
Right. Yeah, that's another story about how, I took a year of French lessons as the chief surgical resident at Cooper Hospital in Camden, which was not easy. I went to night school. So did my ex-wife, and we said, well, we're going to go up there being pretty good at French, and after 2 years, we'll come back and we'll be fluent in French. And it didn't work out that way because it just didn't. A lot of the people up there in French Canada refused to speak en français to an Anglophone, an American who speaks English. Yeah, and they wanted my help with English, which I don't know why they would, because I've never been so terrific with English. I speak Jerseyese, but yeah, it was amazing. But here's what I'm guilty of. I'm guilty of having a love for Canada before I went. My wife had an apartment in Vermont, in Burlington, and she was an attending anesthesiologist at Fletcher Allen, University of Vermont. So on the weekends, we would go back and forth, and our first son was born in Jersey, and when we went up there, he was about 6 or 7 months. Our second child was born at the same time, born in Montreal, when I was in the second year of my fellowship. The American border guards, nasty. Wow. They every time I crossed, and they saw me like every 2 weeks. They knew who I was. I had the red Pathfinder. They'd say, "Step out of the car, sir. Pull over to the side." They'd rip everything out of the car, harass the crap out of me, and then accuse me to my face of being, get this, a Canada-phile. What in God's name is a Canada-phile? Did I like Canada? Yes, I did. Was I granted my fellowship in Montreal? Yes, I was. Was I thrilled that I was in Montreal instead of Little Rock, Arkansas? Yeah, you bet so. That's a fact. But when my wife crossed the border, it was, oh, hi, ma'am, huh? Go right ahead. So don't think that the border guards are somehow
play favorites.
Oh my God, they really did. And the Canadian border guards were always really nice.
I'll tell you, that's interesting because not only are you starting your career, right, in a different country, all right, even though that's where you basically were thrilled to go to, but you have a brand new family, a brand new marriage.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, how much pressure can one person, I mean, that's a lot of responsibility.
It was a lot, and I have to give kudos to my ex-wife because, she was a trooper, and she would wrap up our son, who was maybe 8, 9, 10 months old, and trek out and go from Montreal to South Burlington, Vermont, through all sorts of Canadian snowstorms and whatnot. It was not easy. The thing that stunned me after the 2 years of being at the Montreal Children's is that I thought that when I came back to New Jersey and settled into a practice, because I wasn't looking to go to Texas or California, right? The whole family was from Jersey, and that's how it is. I thought that I'd be going back to cutting edge technology and cutting edge pediatric surgery. And I got kind of a rude awakening. How so? Well, because at the Montreal Children's, the Children's Hospital was only a children's hospital, only. And the only time you had adult patients there is if they were donating a kidney or part of their liver for a transplant. Otherwise, everybody under the entire roof was premature infants, babies, and children. And when I, for instance, the entire Department of Radiology were just pediatric specialists. The entire Department of Pathology, all 6 or 8 of them, they were just pediatric pathology specialists. You come back to any given hospital in New Jersey, and it is true, and you stepped back into a world meant for adults, which meant if there was a radiologic study to be done on a baby at 2:30 in the morning, and you had a full day the next day starting at 7:30 in the morning, like 5 or 6 operations in a row to do, and you were on call, if you didn't get out of bed and drive into the hospital and show up in that radiology suite to help the radiologist discern what they were looking at, you weren't going to get a straight answer. And the problem is, if you don't get a straight answer, now you're lost, because your decision-making process, your algorithm hinges completely on what they're telling you. Does this baby need an emergency operation? Or nah, not so much. And that made it tough, and that was the big difference between going to Canada and training in a freestanding pediatric institution versus coming back to Jersey, where I'm thinking now, just because it's been decades, there isn't a freestanding pediatric facility in New Jersey. Lots of places like to promote that they are, but they're not.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And here I am, an outsider, not involved in the medical field, and I'm thinking it's the exact opposite. That, the United States and New Jersey, New York metropolitan area is on top, and here you're going to Canada. Oh, good luck with that. But it was the exact opposite. So if you had to train, I mean, how great is that to train in a hospital in Montreal like that, just specialized in
It was
kids?
fabulous, and one of the highlights of the entire 2 years that I was there is that I became very well known to certain areas where the Cree Indian population lived and the Inuit population. The Inuit tribe are kind of slang known as Eskimos, and that's a derogatory term. Do not use that term around Inuits, because it's the derogatory term. And so I was thrilled that they didn't really live in Montreal. The Inuits, they lived all the way up, above the Arctic Circle or near it. They were from Pavungnatuk or Iqaluit, and we were their the pediatric surgical command. So if I can remember nights when I'd get an emergency phone call at midnight that they were packing up a teenager who got a single shotgun blast to the abdomen, and they were packing him up and flying him down on a private plane to us, because there was nobody for many, 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 many hundreds of miles. And so I had to kind of, stay with them on radio command all the way down. And honestly, if they made it past the first hour, there was a good chance they were going to survive, because it's that golden hour, that first window where, if a major blood vessel is breached, or if your airway is compromised, you're not going to make it. So in that sense, flying somebody down from the Arctic Circle almost assured that they were probably going to make it, but not necessarily, because if they were that bad, they would probably have died on the spot. And there was enough of that stuff too.
Wow.
Yeah.
So your foundation in pediatrics was solidified in Montreal, in Canada.
Well, no, my foundation as a pediatric surgeon was solidified in my general surgery residency. That's how ahead of time.
Oh, okay.
Hey, I don't want to be. There was a time when I thought I
Sure.
was going to be a cardiac surgeon.
Mm-hmm.
They loved me, I loved them, and I almost put my hat in the ring. And then I just had this epiphany, this crazy epiphany that against all odds, my whole life is against all odds. I've done one thing after the next that I've had no business doing, and I found myself doing a 180 turnaround, and that's what happened. So I was completely taken by the Spirit that my role on this planet was going to be to save the lives surgically of premature infants, babies, and children.
Wow.
I'm not a pediatrician. You say pediatric surgery and people's brains turn off after you say pediatric. God bless the pediatricians, right? We can't do it alone. We can't work in a vacuum. So we need them and they need us. And but no, I've spent decades taking call and operating on premature infants, babies, and children, and I wouldn't change anything about it.
Well, I don't blame you. Thank God you didn't. So, when you're leaving Montreal, Canada, you're coming back to Jersey. How did you decide where to go, where to start down here? Were the doors closed? Did you have to knock on some doors? Kick them open?
At the time, it's kind of interesting, just as a point of perspective. The time I was coming back was around 1998. And at the time, just as a point of perspective, in New Jersey, there were 77,000 practicing attorneys in New Jersey. So they would overflow Giant Stadium over at the Meadowlands.
Wow.
There were 30,000 licensed physicians that were practicing. So a little less than half of the number of attorneys we had as physicians. In New Jersey at the time, there were 12 pediatric surgeons.
Wow.
And that sounds like, what? like think about that. I mean, for millions of people, 12? Well, pediatric surgery, usually you're around a big academic center. And so in Manhattan, there were 83 at the time, 83 pediatric surgeons in Manhattan. And those guys, once in a while, would cross over to northeastern New Jersey. They were crossovers into Long Island, Brooklyn, the Bronx, whatnot. But 83 in Manhattan alone, not just New York City, which would include the 5 boroughs. And so generally, the bulletin goes out every year. The pediatric surgical world, they know who's training in what spot. They know how many fellows are being produced each year, and they know who you are because they granted you the ability to get the spot. So everybody knows everybody pretty much in ped surgery. So when you're coming back, phone calls are made. You call them, they call you, they email you, back and forth. And, I got some real big offers from people in Texas. People, it's all word of mouth. So some people who trained in the Montreal Children's years before me are still connected with the place. And so they talk and they go, hey, this guy's really hot with trauma and this and that, and he's the guy for you. And so you get a phone call from those people.
Sure.
in Houston or wherever, whatever town they were in, and you thank them profusely and you tell them, look, you know what, my grandparents are still alive, my mom and dad are here. I can't imagine. I'm not from that stock where we just picked up and left.
Yeah.
Philadelphia would have been too far. Forget about Texas or California. That's just how it was. So, the people that were in Jersey, like I said, there were 12 ped surgeons working in Jersey. I knew all of them and I knew the centers they worked at. So it was time to make phone calls, and I did. And so I ended up at my first job at Newark Beth Israel and St. Barnabas, and that was in Essex County, New Jersey. And then from there, I spent about 3.5 years there and moved on. We all have our reasons for moving on, and I have tremendous peace of mind that each time I changed my job, it was because of me. It was on my behalf. I was calling the shots. If I didn't like the way things were going, if I didn't like the way I was being treated, no hard feelings. Homie's done. I'm going somewhere else, and it's going to be a bigger and better endeavor. And so it turned out that I had 3 jobs, and the last one was the charm. I spent just under 20 years at my last endeavor, and I have no regrets at all. Made great friends, lifelong friends, went through thick and thin, life and death, all of that stuff.
Wow, that's amazing. So tell me how you felt those early surgeries. Now, in the beginning of doing anything, there's a little trepidation. You're not, or were you just, listen, I got this, I feel comfortable, I can, I'm going to be successful here. Tell me what your emotions are.
Wow, you mean the first few surgeries as a standalone attending?
Absolutely.
Okay, interesting. Because a young surgeon of any order or discipline do not go out there and hang your own shingle and be a solo practitioner. You're going to get yourself into trouble. Go somewhere where you have a mentor, somewhere where somebody's 10 years your senior, 20, 30 years your senior, even 40 years your senior, if that's still possible. But I had somebody who was very much my senior, and she was a lovely person. She was brilliant. She still had more energy than I could ever hope to have, and she was still running in the middle of the night to operate on kids in a life-saving fashion, and she was 79 years old.
Stop it.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Oh yes.
That's a special person.
And God rest her soul. I believe she's passed on now, maybe a handful of years. But she was amazing. But with the old timers come, it's a double-edged sword. You have a lot of old time algorithms and notions, and maybe they're not up on more of the newer
Sure.
endeavors, but that's okay. That's okay. I mean,
The way they learned is the way they learned.
right, and what you strive for is a really good, healthy mix of everything. Look, everybody talks about, oh, minimally invasive surgery. Oh, I'm going to do an MIS fellowship. MIS is minimally invasive surgery. MIS, and a lot of the young kids coming up to me, they're kids. Oh, I want to be a minimally invasive. Okay, good. You know what I tell them when I coach them and mentor them? Finish your general surgery residency. Do all of the cases you can. You want to do your MIS fellowship, do that, but then do another fellowship after that. Why? Because if you finish general surgery residency and then you do a 1-year minimally invasive fellowship, that means you're just a little bit more slick, with doing laparoscopic surgery with a scope than you are any other general surgeon that just comes out of their surgery residency. I said, that makes you a little bit more special than a dime a dozen. And that's just the way it is. So I try to tell them, look, you got all your life to kill yourself. You got all your life to miss your kids' birthday parties because you're operating on some person who's dying. Build yourself a strong foundation. It's like the story of the pigs, right? 3 little pigs with the house of straw and build yourself a castle with the strongest foundation in the world. And when you are done training, you have all of the leverage you need. And the old gray hair surgeons, whether they're guys or gals, are going to say, wait a minute, this gal is a general surgeon, and she did a 2-year trauma critical care fellowship, and then she did hepatobiliary also. Geez, that means that when our staff surgeons cut the common bile duct when they're doing a gallbladder, she'll be able to save their asses. She'll be able to save my ass. That's what the chief will be saying, but he won't say it. They're thinking it, but he won't say it. So that person has tremendous leverage in negotiating a contract and a spot with that group. So all of that went through my head, and I had leverage in places where I hadn't been, and I had zero leverage in the places where I trained. So remember that, gang, for anybody who's thinking that you're going to go back and work as an attorney with the group that you interned with. You might want to think twice, because you'll always be seen as the intern. You'll always be seen as the student or the paralegal. You need to spread your wings and take a job you can cut your teeth.
So you felt like a natural fit, more or less, in the operating room. You felt like this is why you train, this is where I belong, and you just hit the ground running once you started.
You do hit the ground running, but you would be a fool if you took on, I think what it takes to be the best physician you can be. I said physician, I didn't say surgeon. Or the best anything, right? You need to use your brain. You need to use your hands. But if you do it without your heart, you're a fool, and you'll never reach the top. And everybody has to understand what their healthy limits are. For instance, nobody's fellowship is perfect. Nobody gets 100% of the items a pediatric surgeon is responsible for under their belt, so that they feel like they're an expert from the time, at the time you walk out the door, finishing your fellowship. If you do feel that way, you're in trouble. Something's gone wrong, because nobody is an expert at everything the day you graduate your fellowship. So what I'm trying to say is, if you get presented with a case and you go, ay, for instance, a big, huge Wilms tumor. Wilms tumor is a malignant tumor that arises from the kidney, and some of them are, I don't want to say chip shots, but they might be, 12 centimeters large, and The tumor is contained within the kidney. There doesn't seem to be any local spread, and there's no spread into the renal vein, across the midline and up the vena cava. That's a completely different kettle of fish. You might have to put that patient on, cardiopulmonary bypass. The point is, if you're not ready to do that without a senior mentor, do not take that case. Immediately explain to whoever you have to tell, the chief of the Department of Surgery, whoever, certainly the parents. Listen, you know what? We're right across the river from Memorial Sloan Kettering, and those people do this kind of surgery every single day. I'm a pediatric general thoracic surgeon. I might do 2 or 3 of these a year, because that was the average when I came out, was that each institution that did pediatric surgery did about 3 large solid malignant tumors a year. Not Memorial Sloan Kettering. And this is not a commercial for MSK. It's answering the question, were you comfortable? I was comfortable with about 95% of the things that were thrown at me. And here's a case in point. I was presented with a 3-year-old with a tumor in her abdomen, malignant tumor in her abdomen. It was the size of a basketball. And at the time, one of the people that was very influential in the hospital said to me, "Oh, you're going to do this tumor." And he gave me the consult on a Thursday. And I had no OR time on Friday. I had no elective OR time on Friday. So what are you going to do? You're going to tell the orthopedic surgeons and the cardiac surgeons and the colorectal surgeons that have been there for 25 years, you're going to tell them that you're going to cancel all of your cases, so I'm just going to bump you and take your OR so I can do a 6, 8, 9, 10, 12-hour operation? They're going to laugh in your face. Now, that leaves the weekend. I promise you, don't be doing an elective, big-ass malignant tumor on a weekend. Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. But I was in my first year, as a matter of fact, it was my first 6 months, and this influential person demanded that I do this tumor on a Sunday because the next available OR time was Wednesday. Well, you have to understand that when a malignant tumor gets to be that big, it's been there for a long time. It's been there for at least a year. Maybe it's been there for 2 years. We don't know. But so now we're forcing a surgeon to do an operation on a weekend where if something goes wrong in that operating room and you need to call somebody for help, because everybody needs help at one given time or another, there's nobody there on a Sunday. There's tumbleweeds, and that's it. So, stupid me, I should have realized that I had the perfect right to refuse the case, at least how he was pushing this case on me. And I said, listen, I need between 2 and 4 units of packed red blood cells to transfuse this child just in case our blood loss is high, because on a tumor like that, it wouldn't be out of the range of possibilities. And what he said to me raised the flag. He says, you're not going to need to transfuse the patient at all because your blood loss is going to be maybe 75 mLs. And I looked at him and I said, are you out of your mind? I said, please, come on. I said, stop that. So make the long story short, I did the tumor with a 3rd-year surgery resident and a medical student. And when the case was over, it was 13 hours later, and I had gone through 3 full blood volumes of blood. That means if the kid had, I don't know, 1.5 liters of blood in her body, I went through 1, 2, 3, 4.5 liters. I went through 3 full body volumes of blood, but we had to keep transfusion, right? And the point is, the medical student was ready to drop. The 3rd-year resident had gone in and out to eat, pee, drink, all of that stuff. And when my father asked me the next day, oh, what'd you do yesterday in the operating room? I said,
just another day in the office.
I took this big tumor out of a 3-year-old. He says, oh yeah, what kind of tumor? And I says, well, it was a malignant tumor. It's called a neuroblastoma. And he says, oh yeah. He says, well, take a couple hours? I said, it took 13 hours. And he looked at me, he says, what? And I said, it took 13 hours. And he didn't understand. He couldn't comprehend. And because a full day for him, he was a teacher, was, 8 hours, maybe 9, 10 hours. I said, Dad, you know how you like to watch the TV show MASH? I said, watch 26 episodes in a row. And I was still there operating. Looking back, it all worked out great. I have a story to tell. And the kid did great, and the kid survived. And as far as I know, that kid is still alive all of these years later, thank God. Except, you got to think real hard when you're a newbie surgeon. Pick and choose your cases. It's okay to do that.
Now, did you have time to speak to those parents before?
Sure. Oh, yeah. Oh,
I mean, it was like, but it was so quick. I mean.
Well, he was trying to make it quick, but the kid was in the house for like 2 days beforehand. Yes.
How did the parents seem, John? I mean, was it their firstborn? Do you remember? I mean, they must have been stressed out.
Some parents are ostensibly stressed out, and other parents hide their stress, and I'm not quite sure which is worse. I think they're equally as bad, but everything worked out.
I mean, because I know going from your book, the people in there that have dealt with you talk about your bedside manner,
right,
and talk about that you weren't just a facts. These are the facts kind of doctor.
Right.
You actually put them at ease and just ease their stress a lot of times.
Right.
Did that develop young, or did that develop with
you mean where did I develop my bedside manner?
Yeah.
In my general surgery resident, but honestly, I think I've always had that ever since I was a kid, because I'm an empath. So empaths are creatures of emotion, and it makes life extremely difficult for you, the empath. How so? Okay. Well, I can remember once on Christmas morning getting up after a wonderful Christmas Eve with my family, a terrific dinner, then there were gifts to open. But the next morning there were more gifts. And my brother and I and my sister, there were 3 of us, we had a living room with piles of gifts. And I'll never forget, I was sitting on the couch looking out the picture window, and the snow was coming down. It was like a postcard. And I got very emotional. Not for us, but for all the kids out there that didn't have that. And I thought, there's more kids in this world that don't have anything than what we were experiencing. So I tried to kind of contain and that whole feeling and deal with it as a kid. How do you deal with that? And so that's what empaths do. Empaths feel for the other people. Quite frankly, sociopaths, and I've known a few in my day, have no empathy. None. Are you a sociopath? So I have always been an empath, and so I always felt what other people were feeling. So I was an empath and doing that kind of thing long before I became a pediatric surgeon, long before it.
Wow.
Right.
So you kind of put yourself in their place. Like how would I want
sure.
somebody to talk to me?
Oh, sure. Yeah. And look, Phil knows just about my entire family because we went to high school with each other. He was the next door neighbor. And, everybody in my immediate family has passed on. My sister died when she was 31. And then my dad died. He was 83. My brother died at 62. And my mom just passed away just about a month or so ago. And, the school of hard knocks is what makes you a rounded individual. If you want to be a warrior in life, how in God's name are you going to achieve that? If you want to be a ranger, not New York Rangers, if you want to be a ranger in the military, right? You want to be special forces. You gotta know what you're getting yourself into, and you gotta prepare for that. You want to be a Navy SEAL? You have got to prepare for that, and it's not just physical capability and toughness, it's mental toughness. It's all of that. And so to be a warrior in life, whether you're really a military warrior or whether you're a spiritual warrior, Phil,
Yes, absolutely.
you got a decision to make. If you want to be a warrior, you have to understand how it feels to get torpedoed, to get gut punched, to get eviscerated, to get crushed emotionally. You need to know, I wouldn't change anything about my life. Nothing. When I came upon people who were watching their child die in bed in a hospital, I was there. I did it. When I saw grieving parents follow an ambulance into the trauma center because their son had been shot in the head in a bar, I was there. I experienced that. It's all horrible stuff, but you know what? I'm prepared for that stuff. That's what life for me has been all about. It's not just grim and, learning how to be a warrior. Life is about more than that. But if you want to be in the game and you want to be a warrior, not everybody's a warrior. Not everybody's a warrior.
And that's okay.
Yeah, but you have to own up to the title of warrior, whether it's a real warrior, like existential, physical, third dimensional, special forces, Navy SEAL warrior, God bless them, or whether you're a spiritual warrior who's cutting babies open and they're trying to die on you every second of the operation. It's not so dissimilar.
I like not only spiritual warriors, I like the terminology life warriors, because like we've discussed this in the past, John, I mean, a life warrior, you're going to pick up scars along the way.
Oh.
I mean, it's just part of life. I mean, somewhere down the road, you're going to hit a shot. Something's going to try and knock you out. Somebody's going to try and just, run you off the road. Just speaking in terms, and you have to somehow get the scars, dust yourself off, and move forward.
Right.
I mean, and so as you move forward, that's how you get through life. Right. And personally, the scars I have, I wouldn't trade those scars forever for anything, because that makes you who you are today.
And while you're going through it, at least I know that for depending on the category of scar, you think your world is ending. You think you can't take another breath.
You think it's just
and
you.
Somehow or another, you get through it. And that old expression that God doesn't give you more than you can handle. Well, it's proven true for me, but I never would have guessed it would have worked out that way. So, that's it.
So that's what propelled you. Like, even though you went through some tough times in life, you just kept going. You kept a family going. You kept seeing kids, saving lives. I mean, and keep moving forward. And you've affected so many lives.
Yeah.
I mean, like those stories you just told were amazing. What's the percentage of people that go through something as harrowing as that? I mean, it's not very high.
Can I tell a story?
Please
I've been
do.
telling stories the whole time here. Okay. So just to illustrate that you never know, please hear me. You never know what somebody else has gone through. So when my sister was end stage with a brainstem tumor, and I was a second-year surgery resident, oh my God, I was doing everything I could while still completing my duties as a second-year surgery resident. I was also trying to save her life, researching all sorts of protocols and who might be able to save her life. And it was to no avail. When my sister finally died, and I was out for about a week. When I came back, my second year residency partner, he looked at me, he says, he goes, I see how much you're grieving. He goes, I'm sure you loved your sister so much. And I just looked at him and I didn't know what to say. He says, I have a story to tell you. Sure. He said, when I was young, he said, the heroes of my life were my 3 older brothers. He says, and my mother and father, unbeknownst to them, held certain genetics that it imparted certain diseases to the same disease to each one of my brothers that preceded me. He says, and I loved them more than anything, and they loved me. He says, and over about a 6-year course, he watched every one of his 3 brothers get sicker and sicker and sicker and pass of their genetically inherited condition. He says he had no idea whether he would live or die. Not from the condition, just he didn't know whether he wanted to live after that. He didn't know which end was up. And he regained himself and he became a physician. And he said, my life is what it is. And when he told me that, I just remained. I was like, on one hand, I felt a bit stupid. Like, geez, I hope I wasn't carrying on too much, that, you know, my baby sister suffered for 15 years, then died like a dog in the last 5.5 months of her life. This guy watched all 3 of his older brothers pass, one after the next. You never know what other people are going through. So, even if you're not a natural empath, be a little bit understanding. Give people a break. Be a bit empathic.
Yeah. Going back to your sister, I mean, she was a wonderful soul, knowing her with a great sense of humor. I think you and her were connected in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Mentally, you both had the same sense of humor, right? What cracked you up, cracked her up, and
pretty much
cracked us all up, actually, you know. And a kinder, more gentler, and loving soul I don't think I've ever met to this day than Franny.
Thank you, Phil.
You know, we should dedicate.
And you have the right to say that because you knew her well.
I was there, so we should dedicate this episode to her.
Okay.
Absolutely, 100%.
Thanks.
And I think we covered a lot of bases today.
We did.
Okay.
We did. Did I hope I answered all of his questions.
Yeah.
Like you can count on me getting lost in a story. It's okay.
That's right. I'm getting lost too, but somehow we put it all together.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Is it a wrap for today?
It's a wrap for today.
Okay, brother. It's a wrap. Hey,
Thank
listen.
you. Peace.
Can't wait to see you again.
Awesome.
See you soon. God bless.
God bless you. Awesome job. That was great. I'm going to turn my microphone off, John, so we can talk in private.
Yeah.